On. Info. Ready. Ready. Go slow. Green, green, green. Lock it down, lock it down.
I'm destroyed, and I just got drove through like 6 times on the 14th. What the f*** is he thinking? That is the stupidest thing I've seen in my career. Literally.
Everything you described is accurate. Haven't even finished the second stage yet. Half the field's wrecked.
Record. Hell yeah.
11 got it. Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work.
Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
F4, great job, guys.
And welcome back to Racing in the Draft. I appreciate you tuning in bright and early Saturday morning or Sunday morning. Gosh, my days are all messed up. But thanks for tuning in. I think I've got. Hey, let me double check that. That would be really bad. Nope, there it is. Yeah, what a crazy start to the weekend at North Wilkesboro. If it didn't rain a little, it rained a lot. Not sure anybody has seen some of the footage. Some people have, but here's how crazy it actually got at North Wilkesboro. This is pit road. You can see the gentleman climb up onto the wall that the pit crews jump over to change the tires, and I'm not sure I've ever seen a belly flop into pit road. But there you go. They had over 4 inches of rain in 2 hours at North Wilkesboro during the truck race, which pretty much canceled everything from yesterday and has made an absolute mess out of the parking area. But they've brought in almost 880 tons of gravel to get the fans in for today. So quite impressive to say the least. But today's weather looks to be much, much better. Only a 20% chance of light showers throughout the day, but nothing to be too concerned about. They do have the wet weather tire. Could not race the wet weather tire yesterday. You would have needed a motorboat to finish the race yesterday. But either way, okay. We head to North Wilkesboro for the All-Star break, which really isn't a break, but kind of a break from points scoring events, and we get drivers shooting for $1 million for the winner. Can Kyle Larson repeat? Can Kyle Larson even get to the track from Indy? He is currently in Indy qualifying for the Indy 500. He was in the top 12 of the fastest drivers from yesterday's first day of qualifying. I think he was P7, which means he gets to go for the pole today. They lock in 7 through 12, I think between 3 and 4, and then at 5 o'clock or 5:30, they run for the pole. And that should be over by 6 o'clock Indy time, which is in Central, if I'm not mistaken. So he could realistically get on a plane at 6:30 Central, which would be 7:30, which almost means he would probably miss the start of the All-Star race at 8 o'clock. So if Kyle Larson ends up making the final round of qualifying, I would be very hesitant to put him into your lineups today for Draftkings. So be very aware of what is happening with Kyle Larson and his goal for shooting for the pole at Indy. I'm not sure which is more important to him, since this is not a points-paying race. This is not a it's not a regular season race. It's just $1 million. Yes, he would have a shot at $1 million, but getting the pole at Indy, and I'm not sure what the purse is to win Indy, I could only imagine. Number one, it's quite a bit of money, I'm sure, but number two, the notoriety. The best driver to finish the double at Indy was, I think, Tony Stewart finished in third at Indy, and then finished close to the top 10, but he was able to complete both races. That's the closest anybody has come to winning either one of the two races at the double. But Kyle Larson's car is extremely quick at Indy, so it'll be very interesting to kind of watch that all happen. But with the delay of everything, we get the truck race today at 11:30. Currently, we've got, this is kind of, I guess, the prelude to next weekend's best day in automotive racing, which is F1 at Monaco, Indy 500, and then the Coke 600. This week we get F1 at, I can't even pronounce the name of the track, but it's going on right now, and surprise, surprise, Max Verstappen is beating everybody by 6 seconds. Then we get the truck race. Then we get Open and All-Star race. So I guess kind of a little bit of a prelude, a long day of motorsports. So if you like motorsports, your bucket will be filled today. Hopefully not pit road. All right, let's take a look back at last week's Darlington race, the Goodyear 400, where Brad Keselowski finally got that win after 110 starts without a win. Congrats to Brad Keselowski, RFK Racing. It was a really fun event. It was the first time I'd been to Darlington, and highly recommend it. It's a little bit of a larger track. It's intermediate, but it's still easy to watch. I don't think there may not be a bad seat in the place, but it's very easy to see the entire track. Scanner communications worked really well. It was a little bit on the warm side, but either way, I had a great time. Really enjoyed the race. Morning, Mark. I have the first pick on the 5 in our pool, but have no clue to pick him or not. Wow. Is your pool, is it just straight up, or is it based on a lot of the Draftkings type criteria, place differential, and those types of things? Because if it's just a straight up who has the best finish, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable taking Kyle Larson, even though I'm a huge Kyle Larson fan. It's really risky. He has potentially the speed in his Indy car to make the top 6, which would put him into the final round. And then at that point, it gets really, really close on whether he can make it back. If he doesn't make that, I think there's plenty of time for him to make it to North Wilkesboro. They're going to do everything they can. They're going to fly him into a small airport close to there. They're going to helicopter him in. The same. It's kind of a test run for next week's Indy 500 to Coke 600, which has a tendency to sometimes be a little close depending on where you finish in that race. But I would pivot off of, if I'm looking for who's going to win, I would probably pivot off of Larson, and I would probably go, if I had to pick, I think Hamlin probably is the second best choice. He might even be the first best choice, to be perfectly honest. Hamlin had really decent practice speeds. Hamlin has shown that with these differing tires that we're going to be running, with some tire wear being an issue, not an issue, but putting a different twist on things, Hamlin is very quick to adjust. So I would probably pivot to Hamlin if I'm picking a straight up winner. I think that may be a fairly safe bet. But it's the All-Star race. It's new pavement. It's different tires. There's a lot of variables that are going to be going on in this race, which leads to probably a little bit more of a chaotic type of race than we saw last year at this track. I think we're going to see two totally separate types of races. And then, we've got a caution at lap 100, lap 150. So we'll have a 50-lap shootout guaranteed. But I'm sure that won't be the end of it. I'm sure we'll have something at the end. And then the question is, if we have a 10-lap shootout, does somebody risk coming in and getting the softer tires to try to run through the field? So it's gonna be tough to say. There definitely is an advantage on the soft tires for the first probably 10 to 12 laps, and then it kind of evens out. And then probably by a lap 25 or 30, we kind of have a it starts to go back to the primary tire being the advantage. So I mean, kind of the same thing we see in Formula One when they have the soft, medium, and hard, and what they have to start on, what they race on, those types of things. So, Paul, I would probably pivot away from Larson. I think there's just too much risk. I mean, and he's also not practiced on neither of these tires. He hasn't practiced this car. Kevin Harvick did, which is great, but Kevin Harvick's driving style is different than Larson's. So, Cliff Daniels does an amazing job, and I'm sure he's going to be able to decipher a little bit between Kevin Harvick and Larson, but there's definitely a variable when somebody else kind of is practicing and setting up your car. So I honestly would fade away from Larson in a straight up who's going to win or who's going to have the best finish. So that's just me. But let's look at the optimal lineups from last week at Darlington. We had Josh Berry. What a run for Josh Berry from 33rd to 3rd. I mean, once again, this is going to be a driver to watch in the Open. He finished first last year in the Open. Josh Berry is a short track ace. He cut his teeth on racing at short tracks like North Wilkesboro all throughout the Southeast. And with this different tire variable and being able to save tires, Josh Berry, I think, probably stands a pretty good shot at getting into from the Open into the main race. But back to Darlington. Let's not get sidetracked. Brad K. I mean, we had a lot of guys that started up front and stayed up front. Or, as I kind of predicted last week, hey, don't worry about the Dominator. We haven't seen that a whole lot. And I was like, you know what? I'm probably gonna get burned on that one. And sure enough, I got burned by it. Tyler Reddick started on the pole, led 174 laps, had 75 fast laps, was definitely a Dominator, and still, even finishing 32nd, 31 spots of negative place differential, had the fourth highest Draftkings score. So, yeah, I guess I kind of jinxed that thought process. But either way, Tyler Reddick and Chris Buescher put on one heck of a show there at Darlington last week. Noah Gragson with another really solid run from 36th to 14th. Justin Haley, who I definitely kind of had my eye on and was probably my favorite value play last week, definitely had a great race, coming in 9th. And that's really big for a small team like that. So really impressed with Justin Haley and his performance so far in that 51 car. And you can see the other guys that kind of were almost in the optimal lineup. But either way, I mean, it was a straight up the top 6 and points were the top 6 that made the optimal lineup. Mostly because Justin Haley was able to make it into there. The optimal lineup challenge, we've got a little bit of separation at the top. Noah Gragson and Tyler Reddick now with 5, one spot better than Ross Chastain, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, Ty Gibbs, and Brad Keselowski. Any of those guys have the capability of finishing well, and maybe not starting well, but getting a lot of DraftKings points. Keep an eye on them as we go forward for the rest of this season. All right. So these are the practice times from last week. We'll kind of go over this real quick, and we'll get into this All-Star because we got a decent amount to talk about for the All-Star. It's a little wonky of a schedule, and it's really tight between the Open and the regular race. So Yeah, nothing decisive here, at least on fall off. And kind of really nothing here in speed, other than maybe I need to do is with this chart also is have the top, 8 fastest practice ranks and see where they finish to kind of see if that variable is kind of more of what we need to look at. The tire fall off, even with a high tire wear track like Darlington, didn't really show much promise. Now, I mean, Kyle Larson would have been probably in the top 3, if not top 5, other than he blew a tire out and finished 34th. Ryan Blaney got collected with somebody deciding to go 3 wide out of turn 2, finishing 36. But he was the worst on fall off. So, maybe the worst on fall off is somebody we kind of look at as somebody to stay away from, maybe not to take. So I think next week, Charlotte does have a tendency to have a decent amount of tire fall off. We'll kind of run this script again, and we'll also look at the top maybe 8 and fastest. What's up? Tonight should be interesting. Who do I have winning? Yeah, I think you may have just missed the discussion I had with Paul, because I think he's got a pool pick, and I think it's just strictly finishing order, and he was thinking about doing the Larson thing, and there's too many variables for Larson. Number one, somebody else practiced and tested his car. He is in Indy qualifying. He could potentially easily not make it back for this race, and if he doesn't make it back for the race, they don't race. They cannot put a substitute driver in. Oh no, you're fine, no bad. But yeah, if Larson can make it back, he's definitely probably one of the top 3 drivers I would be kind of looking at to potentially win. But to pivot off of Larson as a win, I'm probably going after Denny Hamlin. He was fast in practice. He's got some of the best averages at short tracks, and with this different tire variable going on, and differences, I think Denny Hamlin really stands a pretty good chance. I mean, the one that really going to be that I'm going to be watching is going to be the person who, if we have a straight up race in the open and there's not a whole lot of wonkinesses from the open, I would really look at potentially who is coming out of the open, because they've had a chance to run 100 laps on the track. They've seen the track change. They've seen the tires fall off. They know which tires are better and those types of things. So, I mean, like a Josh Berry is going to be somebody to really watch. If he can go and win the open, that person coming out of the open has a decent advantage, other than they're going to be starting 18th or 17th, depending on the Larson situation. Yeah, but Ty Gibbs is going to have to win the open or finish second or get the fan vote. I'm not sure he gets the fan vote. So he's going to have to finish first or second, and it depends on how well Ty Gibbs runs in the open. So kind of keep an eye on that. I mean, he may not even be in the All-Star race. So that would be a little tricky, at least taking a bet before 2 races happen, because you're now asking that kid to not only win 1 but win 2. So either way, practice times from last week really didn't show much fruition here. I'm going to continue to dive in on this and kind of see what we kind of find out. And I've got a little bit of information for this week's, but we'll take a look at that. But either way, we head to North Wilkesboro, in kind of the foothills of North Carolina, where it rained a lot yesterday, to say the least. Yeah, White, I'm not sure if you saw that video from yesterday or not, where this is pit road, and they were literally swimming on pit road. That's the pit road wall that they jump over to change the tires. Absolutely incredible. Never seen anything like it. I mean, I guess we did see something similar in my hometown of Richmond. But yeah, this was crazy. I've never seen a belly flop into pit road before, at least on purpose. But either way, we head to North Wilkesboro. They just finished repaving this track. It seems to be running really, really well, taking rubber well. The compound that Goodyear brought for both tires seems to be having a little bit of fall off. But either way, we go 200 laps for our main event, and that's the only thing we're really concerned about is that main event for Draftkings. We don't take anything coming out of the open. Well, we don't. There are no points for Draftkings coming out of the open. The drivers that come out of the open, I definitely have what I'll definitely target some of them, and we'll get into that in a minute. But Dominator points are 140. I'm not overly concerned with Dominator points. I don't think we're going to see the same thing we saw last year with Kyle Larson from any driver. I mean, somebody could easily lead 50, 55 laps, but I'm not sure that that's going to be enough to recover from, you know, a Ryan Blaney coming from 17th up to 3rd. It's just there's not enough laps. This is very similar to what we see in truck race, and most of the time in truck race, it's very little to do with a Dominator, which Corey Heim does from time to time. But, you know, I think we'd much more target finishing position, place differential, and then maybe a little bit of Dominator points. So I'm not really focused on much of any Dominators today. In fact, I'm staying away from the top 4 in qualifying from yesterday. So that's kind of my thoughts. Tracks to compare to, even though, I mean, we keep going on these tracks that don't really have anything to compare to, and that's kind of the neat thing about this sport is all these tracks are slightly different but slightly similar. You can look back at Martinsville, Richmond, Phoenix, and maybe a Dover, but Dover really doesn't play now as much as it did a year ago because they've got this repaved surface. So Martinsville, Richmond, Phoenix kind of would be tracks that I would look at. The optimal lineup from last year's All-Star race, yes, we could see that Kyle Larson dominated that race with 145 laps led. I mean, he was hands down. I mean, he almost doubled up Tyler Reddick's score. But the best starting spot to finish inside the optimal lineup was 10th, and that was Bubba Wallace, who finished in 2nd. And Bubba Wallace is probably fast enough to win that race last year if Kyle Larson had an issue, but he didn't. Yeah, and then I mean, there's your pick, Wyatt, with Ty Gibbs from last year. Did qualify in from the All-Star race and then ended up finishing 9th, and he had a pretty strong car. But nobody was going to catch Kyle Larson last year. But as we can see, I mean, it's 1st, 3rd, 2nd, 5th. And then we had an 8th and a 9th, and those are your 2 place differentials. So I think it's really kind of looking at, you know, who is starting towards the rear and who's going to be able to finish up front. That's going to be the key to this race. And as we can see, I mean, top 15 in points when you've only got 24 drivers starting the race. And this year, we're only going to have 20, maybe only 19. So everybody's going to be starting in the top 20. But most of the points came from 11 through 20. So here are the guys that I'm kind of looking at and their starting spots and their rankings. And as you can see over here, I've got the open winner, the open second, and the fan vote. We don't know who those are. I'm just kind of speculating that it's going to be, you know, a Ty Gibbs type of thing. And then you've got the fan vote, which I think probably Noah Gragson, but it could be somebody as kind of far out there as a Carson Hocevar. Had a really good video that he put out, and so did Justin Haley. How far that goes, it's hard to say. But I think the same fan vote from last year, Noah Gragson, has a good shot at getting that fan vote if he doesn't happen to race his way in. But, I mean, as you can see, my ranking system, I mean, it's Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson if he can make it, Chase Elliott, Brian Blaney are the top 4, and they're all starting, you know, 11, 12, 15, and 17. So that's kind of where I'm looking is 10th or starting spots of 10th or worse. So here are our practice speeds, and there really was not a huge fall off, but on a short track, when you're 18 seconds around, you know, when you fall off 3/10 to 2 to 3/10, that that ends up being a fair amount over the course of a 50-lap run. You voted for Eric Jones. He's such a great driver. Yeah, Eric Jones is a great kid. He's great for the sport. He does a lot of community service. Well spoken. Yeah, I've always been a fan of Eric Jones. He's not like one of my favorite drivers, but I definitely like Eric Jones. I've been probably my second is behind Larson. Probably is Josh Berry. So I've been voting some Josh Berry this week. I definitely like Noah Gragson coming as a fan vote possibility. I think the Carson one is kind of funny, and I kind of give him credit for the video that he did. And the Justin Haley play has been really kind of interesting because I've always have been fascinated by the smaller teams trying to get their way up. And it's been kind of interesting to watch Justin Haley and that Rick Ware car perform pretty well this week. So, but either way, I'm not going to put a whole lot of the time into this. I just wanted to make sure we had it here and we can kind of review it and look at it maybe next week. But the other thing is they were running the two different tires during practice. And as hard as I could find, as hard as I could look, I could not find any definitive data that showed me everyone's practice speeds on the soft tire and everyone's practice speeds strictly on the hard tire, and the fall off that each driver had for the two different tires. So this is kind of a mixed bag. I don't know if Michael McDowell, that was running this 18504 to 18664, only a 0.140 fall off, was on the primary tire, the hard tire, and was Christopher Bell's drop off of over 3/10 on a soft tire. So I don't have that information, and that correlates a lot to these practice speeds. So I'm not putting a whole lot of time into these practice speeds, but because I've been doing it every week for the past 3 or 4 weeks, I wanted to make sure I had the data, I had it saved, and I had to give to you guys. So there it is. Take it for what you want. I'm not putting a whole lot of credence into a lot of this. He didn't break his back. He probably showed up at Darlington. Yes, other than Eric Jones admittedly says that he is not as good at Darlington during the day race as he is at the Southern 500, which is a late afternoon to evening race. He says for some reason the track changes much more into the style of racing that he likes. I did see an interview about that with him. He's still good at Darlington on either one, but yeah, I think the back issue probably was still kind of hindering him a little bit. I know he didn't practice a ton for this All-Star race. I think he may have had one of the least amount of laps run. So either way, this is that information. If you want to use it, go ahead. I put it out there. We'll see if it shows anything for next week, but I'm not putting a whole lot behind this because of the different tires. All right, let's get into the driver by driver breakdown. I do not have any use percentage yet because I don't know, because we've got to wait for 3 drivers to come out of the open to get in. We've got to find out if Kyle Larson even makes it back to the race or has the potential to make it back for the race, on whether I put him in. I mean, I've got Kyle Larson ranked as my second highest ranking driver, next to Denny Hamlin being in first. So I don't have any percentages, and I'm not even going to assume to guess about them. But Denny Hamlin's going to be probably pretty heavily owned. I noticed a few drivers that were either good in spring or fall race when looking at the data last week. Yeah, I mean, you definitely have some drivers who are consistently good at Darlington. And, I mean, the winner last week, Brad Keselowski, has always run pretty well. I mean, Denny Hamlin typically is another one that typically runs that track pretty well. Kyle Larson runs that track pretty well. Tyler Reddick runs that track really well. The guys that can save tires and really rip the fence are guys that look at take at Darlington. North Wilkesboro, on the other hand, is going to be a whole nother ball game because we've got a whole new track surface and two different track types, or two different tire types. Sorry, so just watching, I think the Formula One race just ended, and surprise, surprise, Max Verstappen wins again. So Denny Hamlin starting 11th. He was 6th in single lap, 2nd in 10 lap. Remember, this placing of practice speeds more than likely is on the soft tires. Now, the fall off or the 10 lap average, I'm still guessing is probably on the soft tire for all these drivers because it is a faster tire, at least for the first 10 laps. So my guess is this is on the softer tire. They have to start the All-Star race on the softer tire. And the first stage, the first stage is 100 laps. I'm not sure that soft tire makes it 100 laps, or that you want to be behind the wheel of a car after 100 laps on that soft tire. I think I saw a lot of the guys that were doing testing were showing pretty good tire wear on it, but that was only on about a 40 to 50 lap run. But they definitely saw some cords on some of the drivers' cars. So, with that information. But Denny Hamlin so I have taken into consideration when we're looking at this next line, which Denny's got 2 wins, 2 top 5, 2 top 10s, 5 top 20s, a 63.9 Draftkings average, and a 7.4 average finish. We're looking at Martinsville, Bristol, Phoenix, and Richmond from this year, and North Wilkesboro from last year. So those are the 5 tracks that we're putting into this comparison. It's the 5 shortest tracks we've run so far. And how much they're going to correlate, it's going to be a little hard to say. So, but a short track's a short track. I mean, you're not sitting wide open and just a little bit of lift going in a corner. You got to have some heavy braking and got to have some finesse on those tires and things. So either way, I think it does correlate a little bit, and that's why I put it in there. Denny Hamlin finished 13th in the All-Star race last year. This will change. It'll either say open if they only raced the open race, and if it just has finished in the place, that would be for the actual All-Star race. And Denny Hamlin finished 13th in that All-Star race last year. Kyle Larson, 10,300, if he can make the race. That's going to be a big variable. He's starting currently in 12th, but not really. It gets really screwy here. This is very similar to because they did not run the heat races. Why is everybody running Formula One race? Sorry, I just happened to see it and it was like kind of crazy looking. I have never seen that happen. Kyle Larson. So Kevin Harvick practiced the car, ran the qualifying race because of the pit crew challenge. They qualified in 12th. But because of a driver change, it stays with the 12th place starting spot for I'm really thinking something happened. No, okay. Did Max Verstappen get disqualified? I'm not sure. I don't have the volume up on it, but all the Ferrari fans have stormed the track and are waving the flag. Oh well. Not worry about that. Worry about this. Starting in, so it's like they had to change an engine, and moved that will drop him to the rear of the field, but he keeps his starting spot. So kind of like if you go out and qualify, and then you have to change a rear end housing or a brakes or an engine. NASCAR will then keep you in the first starting spot, but then you'll have to drop to the rear before the green flag. So with that being said, Kyle Larson, being a driver change, keeps his 12th starting spot, but will start. I don't know if he's going to start 17th or if he's going to have to start 20th. If he makes the race, big variable there. If he makes the race. If he does make the race, he does start 12th. I'm not worried about that as much. It would have been nice to have him get the 17th starting spot instead of the 12th, because 5 place differentials could be a difference. I don't mind starting Kyle Larson even 12th, starting 17th. I don't know if I would have as much ownership in Kyle Larson because he has not been there to practice it. He's not been there to set the car up. There's lots of variables. I mean, he's going to go from going 241 miles an hour to just a tick over 100. So massive variable in speed. And Kyle Larson's used to doing that. But I don't know if I'll have a whole lot of Kyle Larson. William Byron, $10,000, starting in the 13th position. Pretty good practice speeds, 11th in single lap, 13th in 10 lap. He's got the one win at Martinsville earlier this year. And that might be the most, I don't even say it's that similar, but it's kind of flatter. But I think between Richmond and Martinsville are the two tracks that I would compare the most to North Wilkesboro. But William Byron starting in 13th, decent amount of place differential here. His practice speeds were pretty good. He has struggled lately, so that part is a little bit concerning, but William Byron has a tendency to kind of do that and then all of a sudden pop off for 3 or 4 races and then he'll kind of go dormant again. So I don't mind the William Byron play. I'll have some ownership because of the 13th starting spot. It probably won't be heavily owned, but I don't mind the William Byron play. Ryan Blaney, who was super quick in practice, showed really good long run speed. Also, starting in 17th, he got a 20-second pit road penalty. Too fast entering, maybe even too fast exiting. But he had 2 pit road violations, which gave him a 20-second penalty, which put him at the end of starting spots. So he will be starting in 17th. So I really like Brian Blaney, at least for Draftkings. As far as a win, I mean, it's potential. He was definitely fast enough. But at these short tracks, he's only got 2 top 10s, no top 5s. He did get the win last year at Martinsville in the fall race, so he has a tendency to run well at short tracks. Recently, not so much. He did finish 6th in this race last year. So I really like Ryan Blaney's starting spot. I think there's a lot of potential here for him to move through the field. So I don't mind some Ryan Blaney. Christopher Bell, 9,500. His pit crew won the pit crew challenge. Congrats to them. Second year that they have won that. $100,000 for them to go out and have a good time with, I guess. 9,500 starting in 3rd. Christopher Bell won at Phoenix earlier this year. A little bit of a bigger style track, but still pretty flat. Decent amount of fall off on tire wear, not a huge. But other than that, he's got 3 top 10s. His practice speeds were good. He was 3rd in single lap, 5th in 10 laps, so that's promising. But starting in 3rd, I really, just because this is going to be so much of a, if he can't finish top 3, he's not going to be anywhere close to the optimal lineup. Plain and simple. So I don't like the Christopher Bell play for DraftKings. His practice speeds were good. He could easily finish in the top 5. But I think with this variable tire that they're going to be running, it doesn't bode well for the guys that are starting up front. Just my personal opinion. Chase Elliott, 9,300, starting in 15th. Also had a pit road violation for speeding onto pit road. So he had a 10-second penalty. He had a really good qualifying spot until then, and falling back to 15th. 4th in single lap speeds, 3rd in 10 lap consecutive average, so pretty good speeds there. If we look at his races on these other tracks, 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s, 5 top 20s, 8th place average finish. I don't mind the Chase Elliott play here either. No new chats. I don't mind the Chase Elliott play. I think this is this could be kind of a, I don't know if it'll be sneaky, but so many people are going to be kind of looking at that Kyle Larson play, that Ryan Blaney play. I'm definitely looking at the winner of the Open as a play. I think Chase Elliott kind of falls into here. We do have a little bit of relaxed pricing this week. We still can't put all the top priced drivers in, and I think you get a little bit hard. It gets a little bit hard if you're looking at putting a Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, and Denny Hamlin into your lineup. It gets a little bit thin because the guys that are cheap for a reason. They are not very good at these short tracks. Next in line here, Martin Truex Jr. Very similar type of stats to Chase Elliott, but his starting spot's a little bit further up. So if I'm looking at, do I take a Truex or do I take a Chase Elliott? I'm probably 60% Chase Elliott, 40% Martin Truex Jr. He's starting in 8th, so there is a little bit of wiggle room with place differential. Not a whole lot. I mean, when you've got 20 people, you don't get a ton of place differential points, but there are there. He was 13th in single lap, 12th in 10 lap. He's 9th place average finish at these 5 races we're comparing to, and it was a 14th place here at North Wilkesboro last year. So I don't mind the Martin Truex Jr. play this week. Don't love it. It's kind of one of those, I'll have some ownership, 10 to 15%, but not super heavy on Martin Truex Jr. Joe Logano, practice speeds were fair, 12th and 17th, but then goes out and gets the pole. And I really am not interested in the pole sitter. I don't, because of this variable tire and the fall off from the soft tire. I don't think Joey Logano stays out front much past lap 25 if he's able to serve and hold the front row or the front spot. So I don't like the play. 14.8 average finish, 12th here last year. So just starting too far up for me. And I would say the same thing even if it were, potentially Kyle Larson starting on the front row. I don't like it. Chris Buescher at 8,500 starting in 5th. And poor Chris Buescher just cannot get that checkered flag this year. Had a great run at Darlington again, and it just slipped through his fingers, partially on his fault, partially on Tyler Reddick's fault. I thought it was quite interesting that that happened. Did they DQ Verstappen? No, there he is. Okay. I just saw the Ferrari at the bottom of the podium. Was like, whoa. But because I guess they're in Italy. That's why all the Ferrari fans were out in mass. Sorry. Distracted again. Squirrel. Chris Buescher starting in 5th. He's knocking on the door. This is probably the highest starting spot that I would potentially take. He's got a good average finish of 9.8 at the 5 tracks we're comparing to. 3 top 10s at those. He did finish 16th in this race last year, so that's not awesome. But last year's track and this year's track and the tires are completely different. So, I don't mind the Chris Buescher. This is, like I said, this is probably the highest I would go with starting spots, and I don't really like it. So I'm probably like 10%, 15% ownership in Chris Buescher. Brad Keselowski, winner from last week, great momentum on his side. Starting in 2nd though, and his practice speeds were awful. 3rd in single lap, 31st in 10 lap. I don't know what tire they were running when this happened. And I don't know if they even ran the soft tire. I'm sure they did. So that's even more concerning that he was 33rd in practice speeds. But his finishing orders are pretty good at the 5 tracks we're comparing to, 11.6, and 4 top 20s, 2 top 5s. I mean, all that leans pretty good, but the practice speeds were awful to start in 2nd. So no real interest there either. So we'll keep moving on here. Kyle Busch, $8,000, starting in 14th. Practice speeds were okay. He was 7th and 18th. But then we look at what have you done for me lately at short tracks? Not good. But he's not been good anywhere this year. Richard Childress is definitely that team is off. along with Austin Dillon too. They've been practicing fairly well. They've been qualifying pretty well, but they just cannot get it together for a race. And he was awful last week at Darlington. It was sad to watch. I mean, he's only got 2 top 20s, no top 10s at the 5 races we're comparing to. 21st place average finish, starting in 14th. I really, even though he's got some place differential here, I really don't have a whole lot of interest in Kyle Busch this week. Tyler Reddick, starting in 6th, $7,700. I feel about the same with Tyler Reddick as I do Chris Buescher. I'm gonna have a little bit of interest. He's starting in 6th. Don't love that. Practice speeds were okay. 20th and 8th. He's got a 12th place average finish, which is way improved for Tyler Reddick at short tracks. He has really worked on his short track craft, and it's showing. He's got a third place here at this race last year, but 2311 definitely showed up because Bubba Wallace finished second in the race. Will that be the same this year? Hard to say. But I don't mind Tyler Reddick, 10 to 15%. In fact, I've actually still got that on there. I didn't erase it. There's my one oops that I missed. But that's kind of where I'm sitting with Tyler Reddick, 10 to 15% ownership. And Ross Chastain, kind of the same thing, but 17th and 15th in practice. He's only got 1 top 10, but 5 top 20s, starting in 7th. 5 to 10% ownership with Ross Chastain, maybe. I don't love this play. Kind of there with Kyle Busch also. It just hasn't been there, and he can't pull a Hail Melon at the All-Star race. So that doesn't work. Daniel Suarez starting too far up for my liking. He's starting in 4th. He was 10th in single lap, 23rd in 10 lap. He's only got 1 top 10, 3 top 20s at the 5 short tracks we're comparing to, and a 16.4 average finish. So not a whole lot of interest there. Michael McDowell at 6,300. Michael McDowell is just not that great at short tracks. He was 31st and 20th in practice. Not great. Qualified in 9th. Kind of in the middle of the pack. Last year he overdrove in the Open to try to get into the top 2 to make this race. So he finished the Open race last year in 13th. I don't like this play. I might be at 5%, if that, on Michael McDowell. Really don't like that play. AJ Allmendinger, $6,000, starting in 10th. Practice speeds were not great, 18th and 25th. He finished 5th in the Open race last year. He's got a 23rd place average finish, and I think that was at Martinsville earlier this year. Other than that, we haven't really. AJ's pretty good at short tracks, but he doesn't run this car week in and week out. And starting in 10th, I don't like this play. I might have maybe 5% interest in him. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is going to be an interesting one because he's starting in 16th. But if we look, he was 19th and 9th in practice. Okay, that's not bad. It's not great. But then we look at the 5 short tracks and no top 20s. A 28th place average finish. 9.5 Draftkings. Finished 24th in this race last year. Dead last. I'm not sure I have much interest even starting in 16th. I take that back. I'll have 5 to 10% interest in Ricky Stenhouse Jr. because of place differential. But I definitely do not love the play. His stats on short tracks just are not that good. Ty Gibbs. Okay, so now we've gotten through all of the drivers that more than likely are going to make the race. Kyle Larson is a question mark. And now we go to the Open, and it is the 1st and 2nd place driver from the Open that move on to the All-Star race. And then we have a fan vote that gets voted in as the 3rd. The fan vote is probably the one that scares me the most, because it's just that. It's a fan vote. Especially if, let's say, Noah Gragson and Josh Berry make it in on 1st and 2nd, and then a Justin Haley makes it in as a fan vote. I'm just throwing the names out there. you don't have the Ty Gibbs, you don't have the Bubba Wallace, you don't have the Alex Bowman making it in. That fan vote would really scare me at that point. But Justin Haley's been running really, really well lately. So, I mean, coming from 20th could be intriguing and interesting. I mean, anybody that's starting 11th or worse, I'm gonna have some ownership in. It's when you start to get into the top 10 that I go, okay, I'm not gonna have a whole lot of ownership, just because it just doesn't have enough points there. But trying to think how this would play out best. I mean, the Josh Berry Ty Gibbs combo again would be really intriguing coming from the open, and with a Noah Gragson getting the fan vote, I think would be really intriguing, and I think all three of those would be viable to go into my Draftkings. So, but Ty Gibbs, I mean, he's knocking on the door, and he was first in single lap, seventh in 10 lap. All indications are he should probably finish first or second in this open and make it on. If he does, I'm going to have a fair amount of ownership in him getting a pretty good finishing spot in the All-Star race. I mean, in fact, who was it that said they liked Ty Gibbs? Wyatt said it. Yeah, I mean, if Ty Gibbs can make it through, Ty Gibbs would definitely be somebody that I'll have a pretty large ownership stake in. Bubba Wallace, if he can make it through, he would be another one that I would have the same type of thing, because I mean, these guys are starting 18th, 19th, and 20th at $8,700. He's starting the Open in 4th. He finished 2nd in the actual All-Star race last year. He's got a 12.8 average finish. I don't mind the Bubba Wallace play if he can make it through. Noah Gragson has been showing really, really well as of late. 3 top 20s out of the 5 races we're looking at. Hasn't cracked the top 10 in any of these short tracks, but he's been right there. He's been like 11th, 12th, 13th. He's got a 20.2 average finish. He finished 23rd in this All-Star race last year, but he had a pretty beat-up car, and he was the fan vote to get in. So, if Noah makes it through, depends on what his car looks like, and depends on what type of speeds he was running in the All-Star race. I might have some interest. Alex Bowman, 7,800. He was not in the All-Star race last year because he was battling with the back. Josh Berry ran for him. Starting in 2nd, speeds were not great in practice. 26th and 24th. 2.3 or 12.3 average finish at the 5 short tracks that we're comparing to. 4 top 20s. I mean, out of the 4 starts, he's finishing in the top 20 every time. But if you're starting in 20th and you finish 20th, it doesn't do us any good. I would have some interest in Alex Bowman, mostly because of place differential, but it would really depend on how he was actually running in the race. Remember Gibbs at Bristol, tires were variable there as well. Yeah, Wyatt, I definitely agree with that. There was yeah, and you could say the same thing with Cosgrella and Justin Haley. The thing is, all 3 of them are young drivers, and they were just beating the ever-living heck out of that tire. They would drive to the front, they would run up there, hoping for a caution, and if they didn't get it, they very quickly fell back 10 spots. And then they would do it again, and the same thing would happen. They would do it again, and the same thing would happen. But once it all cycled out, Gibbs ended up being close to the front at the end of that thing. So yeah, out of all of it, I think Gibbs. Yeah, I like Gibbs. Don't get me wrong. If he can make it out of the All-Star race, I think he has a really good shot at finishing well in the regular All-Star race. Alex Bowman, I don't know if I like that play. Chase Briscoe has run really well at short tracks. He's been running very well lately. He kind of understands the tire variable. He's kind of an old school driver. Dirt tracks and short tracks was kind of his bread and butter. He's got a 10.8 average finish. His practice speeds weren't great. So if he can end up finishing well in the Open, definitely somebody I would be interested in. We've talked a lot about Josh Berry. He is a short track ace. This is his bread and butter. driving late models on these tracks all his life and saving tires the entire time. I really like Josh Berry to potentially win the open race again, and move forward. If not, he has a shot at getting the fan vote too. Eric Jones, I would love to see Eric Jones kind of make it in. He potentially could get the fan vote because of some of the sympathy. I mean, and Family Man even talked about he put in a few votes for Eric Jones. I don't know if it's going to be enough to get him past a Noah Gregson. Noah's just got a lot of the female young vote, so we'll kind of see. Eric Jones, $7,000 though, starting in 11th. But he was 34th and 36th in practice, and he only did 59 laps. The 59 laps kind of stood out to me as I'm not sure Eric Jones is 100% still. So he may just kind of take it easy in this race. If he happens to make the All-Star, I don't know if I would love that play, because I think he's still just kind of battling that sore back. So I'd be a little careful with the Eric Jones play. Ryan Preece, Ryan Preece is a really good short track racer, but he was 21st in single lap, 14th in 10 lap. He did finish 4th in the open race last year, so not bad. But I don't, if all the rumors do come true, I think Ryan Preece is going to be the guy that's kind of running around the circle without a chair to sit in. At least with the Stewart Haas potentially selling charters and all that fun stuff. I don't know if Ryan Preece ends up with a seat. Just a lot of indications are that doesn't sit well for Ryan Preece in the future. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens with him in the future. But for today's race, I don't really love it. Todd Gilliland has had moments of greatness so far this year for Todd Gilliland level style. He did 80 laps. He was not super fast. He hasn't been super fast at these style tracks. So if he comes out of the open and happens to make it, we'll see what kind of speed he was running, but I don't know if I would have too much of a play. Carson Osavar, 6,600, starting in 10th. Hold on one second. My dad just texted me. He's having an issue with NASCAR Fantasy Live. They don't do NASCAR Fantasy Live on All-Star Weekend. Oh, let me tell him. Fix this week. It's All-Star. Next week, Charlotte. All right. Want to make sure I told him. But Carson Osavar, 6,600. Has a real good shot at getting the fan vote if he doesn't end up finishing well. Got 2 top 20s. Even if he makes it, I'll have some ownership in him because of a lot of place differential. Probably don't love the play though. I don't know if Carson Osavar. If anybody's willing to send it and send it hard, and if there's a race to send it and send it hard, it's going to be this All-Star race. So watch out for the bowling ball if Carson Osavar happens to make it out of the open and into the regular race. And watch him during the open. If it's right there within sight, he'll pull something like a Hell Melon out to try to win. So he's a loose cannon. He's a good driver, but he's a loose cannon at times. John Hunter Nemechek, 23rd, 21st. He's only got 1 top 10, 1 top 20 at these 5 races we're comparing to. 23rd place average finish. I just don't, I think Legacy Motor Club is still learning about these Toyotas. They're doing well for being a first year in a manufacturer, but nobody at Legacy has had a stellar year at all, where the rest of the Toyotas have performed very well. They're going to catch up, and when they do, it's going to be fun and interesting to watch. But right now, Once again, if he makes it out of the Open, I'll have some ownership because of the place differential. But other than that, probably not much that interested. Same thing for Austin Cindric. No top 20s, a 26.8 average finish. If he makes it out of the Open, I'll have some, but not a whole lot. Austin Dillon, I'm telling you, this poor guy has the worst luck of anybody. Yeah, it's worse than Christopher Bell's and Kyle Busch. They're battling to try to get to Austin Dillon's bad luck. It's almost comically sad on how bad Austin Dillon's luck is. He goes out for qualifying. They're qualifying for the Open on Friday. They literally get to the last two cars. Austin Dillon is sitting on the pole. Nobody is even getting close. And it rains. And they cancel qualifying. He was sitting on the pole with two drivers to go. And they weren't going to catch him, I don't think. I mean, Ty Gibbs was pretty quick. He might have gotten to him if it had been a dry track. And Austin Dillon missed it. And gets to go and start in 15th instead of starting from the pole. I mean, you just cannot write a script of how bad a luck Austin Dillon has had this year. Now, the cars have not been fast. That doesn't help his luck at all either. So if Austin Dillon makes it through, it's going to be a miracle. Corey LaJoie could be somebody that potentially could get the fan vote. He's got a pretty good presence with his Stacking Pennies podcast. He potentially could get a fan vote into this thing. I'm not sure he races his way in. He's got a 30.5 average finish at the 5 tracks we're looking at, and he finished 9th in the Open last year. So I think he's kind of looking at getting the fan vote, and I would kind of have to see what he runs in the Open before I would take a whole lot of shots at him. Zane Smith, next line here. Zane Smith might be battling Austin Dillon for worst luck because Zane Smith just cannot get this car to stay straight. It seems to wreck every week. So I don't think his luck is going to change either, and I don't think he gets the fan vote. If he makes it, I'm not even sure I would have a whole lot of interest in him. I don't have much interest in him when he is starting 36th out of 36 in normal weeks. So I'm not sure why I would take him starting 20th against the best drivers in the series. Justin Haley, starting 16th. Practice speeds were not great, but he has a way to just get the most out of this car. It's so impressive on what he is doing for Rick Ware this year. It's great. Starting in 16th, his practice speeds were not good, and I completely understand. None of these stats make any sense. They're not in any shape good. But if he were to happen to get the fan vote, which I think is a long shot a little bit, but if he can make it through, I think he would be an interesting pick. That's going to say I'm going to have a whole lot of him, but I would have him. Maybe not quite as much as a Ty Gibbs coming from the back, but I would definitely have some interest in Justin Haley. Harrison Burton, 31.5 average finish at the 5 tracks we're comparing to. He's not going to get the fan vote. I'm not sure he sniffs even a top 10, so we'll just keep moving. Daniel Hemrick, 5,300, starting in 14th. Practice speeds were awful. Hasn't sniffed a top 20 yet this year, so no real interest there. Kaz Grala, at least Kaz Grala's got one top 20. I think that was at Bristol, where tire wear was big, as Wyatt had pointed out to us. If Kaz Grala makes it, maybe, but I don't see Kaz Grala getting first or second in this race, to be perfectly honest. He might sniff a top 10, and I don't see him getting the fan vote. And yes, I know Timmy Hill is doing this, but Timmy Hill's, he was 2.5 seconds off in practice. So I said, you know what, I'm not even going to build a page for him because I'm not sure he races another race this year, and I wasn't going to waste 20 minutes building this page for Timmy Hill. So Timmy Hill is in the Open, and I did not make a page for him, so no real interest. Guys that I kind of like coming from the back, or that I think will be highly owned, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, if Kyle Larson makes it. Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney. Place differentials. The Open winner I find probably the most fascinating out of all of them, along with Ryan Blaney. but remember, they're probably both going to be very heavily owned. And also remember, you're going to have about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to get your lineups ready. And I run 40 lineups. Now, I've already pre-built a lot of my lineups waiting to see who the open winner is and fan votes and what pricing they have, because it'll change how I build the rest of my lineup. But I've got a head start. I would recommend anybody else, if you're running 20, 40, 60 lineups and you don't have a lineup builder program, and I do not. I still hand build most of mine. I start with pretty much a base model, but and then I kind of fill in some blanks. So it doesn't take me as long to actually build 40 lineups as building single 40 lineups. But I'm really would be interested in. I think the Chase Elliott plays great. I think the Ryan Blaney plays great. William Byron, I don't mind. But the open winner and the open in the second definitely are going to be very interesting. I don't really like the Ricky Stenhouse or Kyle Busch play. And then these guys down here, Michael McDowell, Joey Logano, Ross Chastain, Brett Keselowski, Christopher Bell, not really that interested in. So it's really going to be, can you find the right combinations of the Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, maybe a Kyle Larson. You're going to probably take 2 to 3 of these guys, and then 2 to 3 of these guys, and maybe a sprinkling of somebody, Martin Truex, Tyler Reddick, Chris Buescher. But I really just do not see anybody coming from the first 4 starting spots. It just logically just does not make any sense. And I just, with this tire variable, there's going to be a ton of passing. But either way, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Great crowd this morning. We're up to 9 likes. Love to see a few more. 64 views. It's definitely one of the better streams I've had. Maybe 10 in the morning is more the better route than 10 at night. The problem is with baseball season kind of getting ramped up and vacations and summer and all that, I still think Saturday nights are going to be probably the best time for me to do these. We'll see what kind of goes on next week. I will definitely either be live next Saturday night to break down the Coke 600. What time is this will be a good indication. I can't remember what time the Xfinity race is. What time is Xfinity race? Week. Actually, Jayski's got it. Oh, it's at 1 p.m. So probably more than likely Saturday night will be when I'll do my video. Because we've got Monaco at, I think, 9 or 10 in the morning. Then you got the Indy 500 starting at noon. And then you got the Coke 600. And I will definitely be watching Indy 500 and Coke 600 because my guy Kyle Larson's doing the double. But I will definitely probably have an eye on the Formula One race just because it's the best day in autosports. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. We go live every week. We break down all the Draftkings you need to know for NASCAR. We review the last week's results. If you are just getting into here, make sure you go back to the beginning. We reviewed Darlington, and we do that every week. We look at practice speeds and qualifying and points and all that stuff. I appreciate you tuning in. The other thing I might think about doing is maybe a Tuesday preview and look back. That way I can kind of shorten the Saturday down to a little bit, because what are we sitting at here for time wise? Yeah, we're an hour and 8, and that's been about where we typically run, is about this hour and 10 mark. If I can shorten it to 45, 50 minutes, maybe that'll help things out. So I may look at doing potentially a Tuesday look back and preview, because we won't have pricing or anything like that out yet. No practice, no anything. But kind of get a preview of what can we expect going into the weekend. So that might be on the table. But we'll have to wait and see what my schedules kind of look like. So, but I appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. We will see you next week. Good luck with the All-Star race and enjoy the the rest of your day of racing. Thanks. Bye.
Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W, so got to be around at the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Let's go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checker. You're fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby! Hell yeah! Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work. Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job. Great job, guys. Excellent work, my man. Excellent work. Thank you.
Man, that's awesome. Set out with a goal and got it here, bud. Thank you very much.
Really proud of you, man. Drove your butt off tonight. We had the fastest car here, bud.
Probably killed our deal there. Just feel like I gave one away.
Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job. Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend. What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.